studio audience from the Juneau Live Studio at Resurrection Lutheran Church in beautiful downtown Juneau. This is Whole. And here's your host, Kristen Mabry.
Hi and welcome. We're glad to be here, our very first show.
Yeah, very first show. So I'm going to introduce the concept of the show, and then I'll let Kristen talk a little bit about herself. So I'm Brad Perkins. I'm the producer of Juneau Live Studio and the Juneau Live channel from Resurrection Lutheran Church. And so we've been wanting to do a yoga meditation show for like over a year, and have had trouble finding the right host for the show. But it seemed natural, especially during the pandemic, but also just in general, having a show about yoga and meditation. And the format of this show is similar to our other shows, is that we're looking for a host that could look around the community and find yoga studios or people that are doing yoga classes, or also the businesses in town that might have supplies for yoga meditation and whatever. And so the idea is that Kristen will have people come in as guests, and maybe we'll do some sample classes, like Yoga Path might bring in hopefully an instructor with some class, and then she also will teach them yoga, because she's as you'll learn in a minute, she's a qualified yoga instructor. And we've got space here. I have yoga equipment in here. I'm sure she'll bring her own. And I actually went out and bought a yoga carpet, because the church carpet I don't want to do yoga on. And sad to say, I actually used to do yoga also over at Yoga Path before the pandemic. And so maybe if things go well and we have enough crew in here, I'll come in and sit in on a class.
Love it.
Because it's been a long time since I've done downward dog or any of the other things. And so Kristen, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and experience with yoga?
Well, I am just so excited to be here and so glad that you have the vision to create something like this. I just think it's amazing. So I'll share my story. I have always loved movement and all kinds of movement, and so taught many formats of fitness for many years, and then kind of stumbled into yoga and immediately fell in love with the different kind of movement and the mind-body connection. That really was the first time I'd ever felt that, was when I stayed to take a yoga class after some athletic movement one day. And after experiencing that myself for a while, I knew that I had to share it. So then going to teacher training and just becoming more fluent in how do we offer this thing and keep it safe and offer it in ways that are meaningful to people. And folks have different needs when they come. So how can we make sure that we're keeping everyone safe and everyone has a meaningful experience for them and something that meets their own needs. And so then after teaching for a number of years, became really interested in working one-on-one with folks and really looking deeper and how can these contemplative practices really meet people's needs. And so then I studied and became a yoga therapist back in 2017, and have been really enjoying meeting one-on-one with people and diving a little bit deeper. And that work has included a lot of stress resilience and management, which I think in the past 2 years has really come in handy, and I took a deep dive into meditation and mindfulness, which I think are just beautifully complementary practices.
And I don't understand half those terms you just talked about, yoga therapists and all that. So that'd be great. I'm looking forward to learning about all that. I have to admit that when I had not done yoga till maybe about 7 years ago, and my son, who's even more, what I want to say, he's an atheist, and my wife's the pastor. He is just not into being spiritual, but he was doing yoga, and I said, how can you possibly do? He said, well, there are these two guys from Australia that have these yoga videos that do not emphasize anything about the spiritual aspect, and they have millions of views. And he said a lot of people watch them, and so I started doing their yoga program, where they don't go into all that stuff, and they just do the yoga stuff. And then though, when I started going to Yoga Path, they do more of that stuff. And actually, I found it interesting, and
And I think that's a great thing about it. Yoga can be whatever you want it to be. And you don't have to make it fit in a box. You don't have to be this way or that way. It's big enough for everybody to have the experience that's meaningful for them. And that's one of the reasons why I love the practice so much.
Yeah, and that's what I thought about, was that people have their own entry points, right? And some people, I think, can be drawn to the whole spiritual aspect right off the bat, or the meditative aspect. And some people, because when they got to meditation portions of it, I often would fall asleep, or whatever, which I understand is actually maybe okay. But some people really get into that, and I think that's a great jumping off for all these things. And I think the point of many of our Juno Live shows are to get people, get people an introduction to something, and get you finding a path. Because whatever guests you have, we're going to let them, as I always say, hawk your wares. You can come in here, including you, but also Yoga Path comes in, or somebody in town, even selling equipment, is that it's a chance for people to find out what they can do, right? And where they can go to find those services in town. And while things are only slowly opening up as, COVID, well, I don't know, it's never going to go away, but as a society, there's paths to get into these things. But, for now, you can practice along, and that brings us up to disclaimers. So I'll let you do your little disclaimer. You want to talk about, before we get started, even today, doing a little bit, and then I'll do the legal disclaimer for the studio, being an attorney. So.
Sure, and I'm so excited to get to interact with. We are so blessed to live in Juneau with so many people who provide just wonderful services. And so I'm so excited to get to talk to them and to get to showcase the different skill sets that they bring and the different offerings that we have around town. So really looking forward to those conversations. Yeah. So for today's practice, we're going to keep it really, really simple. We're going to do a little bit of seated movement, and I'm going to call it mindful movement today. But even then, the whole point of these practices is to move in a way that feels nourishing and comfortable and restorative for you. So it's okay to feel a stretch. It's okay to move through a comfortable range of motion, but we don't ever want to put any stress or strain on our joints. We don't want to come into a place where we're shaking or trembling. None of that. So today we're going to keep it really simple, and if in doubt, err on the side of caution. And the most important part is just breathe. And if you're breathing, you're doing the practice.
Yeah, and I know you're going to be doing some things with talking to people that have disabilities and things like that. And one of the reasons I got into yoga is I have a fused ankle. I've lost half of one side of my foot. I have type 2 diabetes, and while I'm in remission now, I had to get past all those things at one time. And so yoga was one of the ways I learned to do all that. And so that's a great opportunity to do all those things. And as the also jack of all trades, master of none, is I'm also the attorney for the church, and so we want people to before you engage in any physical activity, whether you're dancing along with one of our concerts or doing yoga with us in the studio at home, is consult a physician if you have any concerns, so you don't overstrain yourself, because we don't want you suing the church or suing me or suing Kristen as you participate in doing any of these things. But there may well be opportunities besides participating along with us while watching the videos. There's also maybe opportunities to come down to the studio at some point, not just to watch the thing, but actually participate. And we'll let you know in advance of those things. This show, along with all other shows, are shot on 2 Saturdays a month, and it's on the website when those are scheduled. And so I think it would be great if we can, have opportunities for people to come down. And I think we have enough space for a fair-sized yoga class in here. So that's one of the church dogs. Very excited about the yoga class. I'm very excited about the yoga class here. So.
Animals are always attracted to any time we get on the mat or do the practice. They love to be a part of it.
Well, I will tell you that when we thought we were about to start the show a couple of months ago, the instructor couldn't make it that week. We had a couple of people in here that were doing some yoga moves, and the other church dog, Corbin, who sadly appears in way too many videos, we were doing downward dog, and he actually got down there and was actually, he's an Australian Shepherd, so he wants to get involved in everything. He actually was doing he was like, what are you doing? And he was actually doing downward dog accidentally.
If only our spines were that supple and mobile.
Yeah, it was quite something. So that's great. I'm looking forward to all these. Really looking forward to the show. Like I said, it was one of the very first shows, even the first season. I wanted to find somebody to do a show like this. So, any other things you want to say on our first show before we let you go over and do a little bit on the first premiere show?
I just want to say again how remarkable it is that Juno Live had the concept to do this kind of a show, and the idea that we're doing this here at Resurrection Lutheran Church, I just think is incredibly open-minded, and I'm just so honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, I thank you for that. I think this is, and if anyone else out there has a concept for some kind of, community, access programming that we can put on here, we're loving to do that. I should tell you where the name came from. We try to come up with names that we can, trademark, in the sense that sometime in the future we're looking to franchise the whole Juno Live studio channel concept to other nonprofits around the country. And to do that, being an intellectual property attorney, I'm trying to come up with novel names that we don't tread on anyone else's trademarks. And so we've come up with names that are different. Every one of our show names come up that aren't being used somewhere else. And we couldn't come up with a yoga meditation show name. And Pastor Karen, said, why don't we do something about the whole body experience or whatever? And so that's where she came up with the name Whole.
And I just love that it's mind, body, spirit, it's everything together. And it's not just yoga meditation, it's Tai Chi, it's any kind of mindful movement and stillness that we want to practice. So I just love that.
Yeah, so that's where that name came from. Okay, well then I will stop babbling because I tend to talk too much on camera, and I'm on camera too much for being the producer. And we'll let you sidle over to there. I'll let you walk across the cameras while the camera stays on me. And then I will refocus the cameras, and we will let you finish up the show and go over there. So, okay, we're ready to move over to Kristen on the demonstration set. Oh, you have no camera on. We're just going to fix that right now. How professional are we?
Okay. All right. So let's try just a simple seated practice today. So first of all, if you happen to be in a chair, make sure that your feet are grounded on the floor. So it might be that if you're in a high chair or you're deep back in the chair, you might want something to put underneath your feet. So that's always an option if you have a block or a cushion or a book or something nearby so that your feet feel supported and grounded. And notice how I'm lifting my back away from the chair. So we're going to start with just a little bit of breath work. Whatever mindful movement or stillness that we come into, the breath is the guiding force, the guiding light, if you will. So how about joining me in just a few moments of practice? You're welcome to keep eyes open, or if you're comfortable where you are and it feels safe, go ahead and just lightly close the eyes. And we're just going to draw attention to our breath today. So without trying to change it or manipulate it, breathing in and out through your nose today, if that works, just lightly closing the lips. Just taking a few slow, deep breaths. And no matter what else we do, just allowing ourselves to take a few slow, deep breaths can make all the difference in nervous system resilience, in quieting our mind, in creating a pause between stimulus and response. Just notice what it feels like to just be for a moment. We're human beings after all. We can stop the doing and just come into the space of taking a few deep breaths. Notice as you're breathing in, where do you feel your body changing? Where do you feel breath moving? Maybe you place a hand on your belly, maybe a hand on your chest. And just notice how your body changes shape to welcome in breath. Notice if there's any tension in your neck, your shoulders, your jaw, maybe in your face. Can you bring just a little light smile to your lips as you're breathing? you're still feeling tension, just imagine someone you care about deeply. And imagine that as you breathe, you're sending them love. And see if that softens up the shoulders and chest and jaw a little bit. Let's take just a couple more breaths. As we practice meditation and yoga and any of this mindful movement, the observation, the reflection about what's happening is just as important as the actual doing of it. So we're letting our mind, our body, our heart notice what's happening as we breathe these soft, easy breaths. As we're breathing in, we're simply breathing in. And as we're breathing out, we're just doing that, breathing out. For just these few moments, there's no other expectation. There's nothing to do, nowhere to be. Just here, just now. And as you like, maybe just relaxing your hands back down on your lap. If your eyes have been closed, just opening them and reorienting to your surroundings. And we'll start with just some really gentle movement. But again, if there's anything I suggest that doesn't feel safe or maybe you think might not be a good match for you today, it's always a good idea to opt out of anything that feels that way. So how about let's start moving slowly with a deep breath in and lifting the shoulders up. And slowly relaxing the shoulders down on the exhale. So that's inhale, shoulders come up. And exhale, the shoulders release down. Just noticing what it feels like to move slowly through a big range of motion. And as you release your shoulders down, maybe you're releasing other tension and stress in the body, maybe in the mind, maybe in the heart. And then we'll relax the shoulders on the back, and hopefully you can feel some nice open space around the neck and the ears. And so once we've created that space, we can work a little bit with the cervical spine. So we'll just simply turn the chin to one side on your inhalation. And on the exhale, we'll bring that chin right back into the center. And then simply try the other side. Slow, gentle, easy movement to one side. And a slow release back to center. And as we're doing these gentle, easy movements, just notice if there's any compensation. Does the shoulder want to come with you? Can the shoulders stay down and back? And where are you feeling a wonderful stretch in the side of the neck or the top of the shoulder? Take just a few more of these deep, slow breaths. Notice how that's starting to feel, maybe loosening up a little bit through your upper body, making it a little bit easier to breathe. Maybe the breath comes a little deeper, a little easier. All right, let's do one more movement. We're going to do a simple, easy seated twist. So if you've found yourself in front of the computer for a long time, or maybe you're watching TV, or you're at work and you're typing, anything like that, and these little movements can be just game changers as far as our overall energy and our spinal alignment and just our comfort level. So this simple seated twist is another really great exercise or pose or sequence of movement to try anytime you feel like you've been in the same position for a long time. So on the inhalation now, we're going to lift up through the top of the head and slowly begin to turn our body. So I've got one hand on my knee and the other hand just on the chair behind me. And on the exhalation, I'll just slowly release and come back to where I started. Let's try that on the other side, just slowly moving. Imagine that line up through the top of the head, and we're rotating around that center line. So notice how that feels in your back, your shoulders. So we always start with a small range of motion. Notice how that feels, and then maybe a little bit bigger range of motion. Maybe you continue the twist in your neck while the feet are firmly on the ground. All right, and again, just noticing how that feels, creating a lot of spaciousness, openness. It makes it easier for the breath to come in. It makes it a little bit easier for these ancillary muscles and joints to move with the last little bit of your inhalation. Let's do another movement that I find really helpful sometimes to relieve fatigue or soreness in low back. And so if you're at the edge of your chair like I am, maybe just taking the feet a little wider apart to create a little bit more room for the pelvis. We're just going to take some easy circles. So again, starting small, notice how that feels in low back. So maybe a full rotation on a breath cycle. Sometimes we notice really interesting sounds, pops and cracks, or the joints making other sounds, as long as it feels safe and good. And maybe you want to move the other way around the circle just a little bit with some big deep breaths. Maybe you noticed when you started moving, the movement was pretty small, and now maybe the movement's just a little bit bigger, a little bit more comfortable. We're increasing blood flow, most likely increasing the volume of air that you're breathing in, involving more of our core muscles in the breath process, and really getting that diaphragm to move through a comfortable range. All right, so let's try just one more thing. So on an inhale, we're going to open and allow the chest to open just a little bit more. So we're lifting through chest center on the inhale. And on the exhale, we're going to slowly release and maybe just round over our legs just a little bit. Feeling some length in the low back. Let's try that a few more times. Inhale, opening through chest. Exhale, rounding over the legs, stretching through low back. And maybe one more time. Exhaling, rounding over. And slowly coming back into center where we started. And for today, let's just end here with a few more breaths, noticing how just a few minutes of mindful movement, focused awareness on your breath, on how you're feeling, moving with the intention of restoring some blood flow and some attention and awareness to our body. Notice how that makes you feel. And then with any mindful movement practice, it's always a really good idea to end with a moment of gratitude. So if you like, if you feel inspired, taking a hand to heart center. This is the season of Thanksgiving, so maybe just bring to mind something for which you're grateful today, something that makes you smile, that lights up your face, that lifts your heart. And if you like, setting the intention to let that gratitude guide your thoughts and words and actions. And at the end of a yoga practice, we often share a greeting with each other, and it's a Sanskrit word, namaste. Namas means I acknowledge you. I I acknowledge the fact that we have shared some time. Te is you. And so when I say namaste, I say, thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to so many more fantastic conversations. Namaste.